Time to love again. Time to love again.
Hi, thanks for joining. Today we're going to take a look at the console and Spikemark 6. So, first up here we have the console. You can see we have our 4 different playbacks. We have individual live speed adjust for each playback. We have our soft stop, individual goes, our cue navigation for next and previous, our hold to run, and jogging. So jumping into Spikemark then. So if you've used Spikemark in Spikemark 5, there's not a ton different in the jog workspace. So I'm mostly just going to focus here on the cues workspace. And we can see immediately right up here at the top is where it starts to look new. And so we can see across the top in our left-hand pane here, we have our playback controls. So this is our on-screen virtual representation of what the playbacks are. For this show, I have 4, which line up with our 4 physical buttons. Starting over here on the left in playback 1, we have a couple different sections to look at. So we have our active cues, which is things that are running. Right now nothing's running, so nothing shows up there. What is loaded, and then we have our go and stop buttons, which match the physical hardware buttons, and our live speed adjust. So we can still use Spikemark without the console. We have all of the buttons that are on screen also on the physical console. So I'm just going to reset our speed here to 100. So you can see now that I've loaded our cue number 1, we can see across the top, we can see our loaded cues now show up that it's Q1, get our little description that it's the first cue, and then I have the ability to run my individual playbacks. So with Spikemark 6, the big thing is, one of the new big things is playbacks. And the idea with playbacks is it allows us to split up things. So some things like potentially we want all of our flying effects to be on playback 1, and we want all of our deck tracks to be on playback 2, and all of our lifts to be on playback 3. This allows us to then have the individual control for live speed adjust. So if we don't want to speed up the deck tracks, we can speed up just the deck tracks, or for organizational things where we just want to always know that if I press go for playback 1, it's always going to be something flying in and out, or if I press the go for playback 3, it's always lifts. The other nice thing that this allows for too then is if we have some really tight timing for a cue, and it's going to happen in a little bit different sequence every night depending on what's happening, it allows us to get it all live and then have our 4 individual go buttons instead of having to rely on loading the next cue and immediately hitting go and then jumping up and jumping all around. This lays it out a little bit easier for those tight timing things. So if I go ahead and now that I have this loaded, and go ahead, I press my hold to run, and then I can start each of these individually. So that was playback 1, I can start playback 2, and 3, and 4. And then we can see in our visualizer, just like before, you can see all of our stuff moving as it moves with the cue. And I can choose to just stop an individual playback by using the stop button either on the console or on the screen, and that'll stop just that playback. Or if I release the hold to run, everything stops just like before. So besides playbacks, the live speed adjust is the other big part of a playback, and there are a couple of different reasons why this is pretty useful. So you can do anything from if tonight the actors are riding a wagon and they're supposed to be at a certain place by the end of the monologue, and they've added a couple pages worth of lines, you want to slow it down so it doesn't get there too early. Or similarly, if they've skipped a couple pages and you want to speed it up a little bit so it makes it there on time, that's what the live speed adjust allows. Another cool use for live speed is so when we're trying something out, something big and heavy, we don't necessarily want to run it at the show speed, but we want to program it like that, but then we want to slowly build up confidence and test it out, we can spin it all the way down to say 10%, or we can drag it on the screen down to 10% and then start running it and slowly see it move, see everything clears nicely and doesn't have any interference, and then we can slowly build our confidence and speed it all the way up to our normal show speed. This then, lets you not have to constantly be changing the show file when you know you want it to run at a certain speed. Another nice thing with the live speed is similar to building our confidence in that the motion works is when we introduce the actors or performers for the first time, we can slow it down, show it to them at a slow speed, let them try it out at a slower speed, and then build back up to where we actually want to run the show at. And so then the speed adjust, you can spin it all the way down to 0% or all the way up to 200% or whatever the slowest fast machine is. So if a machine can only go 36 inches a second and you have it programmed to go 24, you're not going to be able to turn it all the way up to 200%. You're only going to be able to turn it up till it hits that 36 inches a second, and then it'll be limited to that. So it always obeys your max speed set over here in properties. So also, just like before, if you click on the thing you want to edit, it pops up in this new movement editor, which you can reposition, you can change the size of, and then when you close it and reopen it, it'll pop up back where it was. So then kind of starting from the top. So if we look at our cues now, we have our cue number, the cue name, you can change the color of it like before. And now we have this new cue notes section, which allows us to add more information about what's happening. This is super handy if you want to add in some more specifics of things that need to be in place for this cue to run or a specific line or anything like that. And then the other nice thing is it allows us to add a little bit of formatting. So if there's something important that we want to make sure we take note of, we can add some bold text, we can add some big text. And we can save that. And so then this just allows us to get a little bit more detail in the cue notes about what is happening. So then we have our movements, which look very similar to they looked before. We have your target speed, accel, decel, or you can switch over to time, program it in time, and then our spikes down at the bottom. So I'm gonna just scroll down to the bottom here, and we can, where I have an empty cue, or if you don't have an empty cue, we can still use our keyboard shortcut, Control U, or we can right click, add cue, and then we can start programming by, you grab the thing you want. So for me, I'll go ahead and I'll grab the spotline acro over here, and I just drag it and drop it. This then shows us the different playbacks we want to run this on. So I want to run this on playback 2. So I'm going to hover over playback 2, and then I drop my spotline acro, and then I can click it and I can start editing. So let's have this say run to 0, and let's say we want to go to 48, 24, 24. We can see, just like before, our movement graph over here changes in real time as we type in and click Save Changes. I can load it. We can see our go button doesn't show very well on the camera here, but in reality it's showing up blue. And then we can go ahead, hold the run and press our go. And then we can see in the visualizer over here, it's running, and it's actually running slower than our 48 because we have our speed turned down to 20%. And we can see over here that our speed was actually 9. And then so if I want to just reset the speed, I can double click the number in Spikemark, or I can double click the bezel on the playback, and that'll get it back to 100%. So let's go ahead and drop acro 2 onto 32, put it back to 120. We'll go 48, 24, 24, save, load, and run that. And now we can see we actually got up to our full speed that time, now that we put our playback back to 100%. So that's all great for when we want to do just those simple ones of just one movement, but I bet most of the time we're gonna, not most of the time, some of the time we're gonna want to make that a little bit more complex motion. And so before we had cue links, and now we have cue triggers. So triggers live over here on the left in the cues workspace. They show up below the axes list, and we have 4 different types. We have our delay trigger, we have a completion trigger, we have a position trigger, and we have our FX input trigger. And so similar to motors, we go to add these, we can go ahead and we can drag and drop it on the step that we want to link to. So those step numbers, we can see that shows up over here on the left. So we have our playback, and then we have our step, and then we have our motor. Then now down here we can see step 1 starts and then triggers step 2 after a 0-second delay. We can go ahead and change that. Let's change it to 5 seconds. We can save that change, and then we can go ahead and we can grab our spotlight acro again, dropped it on the trigger to add step 2, and click that. I can edit that, and let's go ahead and send it back to 120, and we'll go 48, 24, 24, and we can save those changes. Now if we run it, I can go ahead and load it, press and hold my hold to run, go ahead and press go. We can see our first move happens, we have our delay, and then our second move happens. And then we're not limited to just having one thing in each of our steps. We can have as many things as we want. So I can go ahead, and I'm also going to add our turntable to step 2 here. And let's see, we can have that go to, we'll say 300. And so this one has a speed limited zone set up on it, which is what this cross hatching here is. We'll talk about that in a second. So we'll just slow this down and save those changes. Now we can see we have, and we can just keep adding more and more machines into our steps until we're happy. But then when we go ahead, if we load, press and go, we can see that once our delay is over, we fire both things in step 2. So besides just the hold to run on the console here, you can also hook up a foot pedal if you would prefer to not hold the button. And then as that finishes, there we go, everything goes blue, and we can release our hold to run. So besides just delay triggers, we also have, I'm going to start a new cue, we also have completion triggers. So I can drag my completion trigger, drop it on. If I click on it, there's nothing to edit because it's a completion trigger. I can go ahead, program this. Let's go to 100. That's fine. Drop it on to the completion trigger, send it back to 0. And this time I programmed it on to playback 1. Press and use the on-screen buttons. And if I let go, it will stop. And let's say I've started to program this on playback 1, but really, I didn't really want it on playback 1. I can grab my playback and I can drag it over and drop it in the same cue onto a different playback. Or if really I wanted this up in, say, cue 31, I can grab it and I can drop it up there. So the nice thing that we've introduced with 6 is a lot more drag and drop to reorder, drag and drop to move around. So say also, I want to change my ordering of the cues. I'm going to just put this onto playback 3 so it's a little bit more clear what's going on. Let's say I want this cue here, this 31, to really happen between these two. If I grab it and I drop it in between, it'll reorder it for me. Similarly, if I know, oh, I just want to go ahead and add my floor pocket in between these cues, I can just drop it there and it'll make that new cue for me. I can also just grab a step, say I don't really want those linked, I would really just like step 2 to be on a separate playback. I can go ahead and I can drag it over to a new playback. This is pretty handy It's a quick way to be able to reorder things because I can also just grab that turntable, drag it, and drop it. The idea being that you see a thing, you can grab it, you can move it, and drop it to where you actually want it. Similarly, you can also delete that way. You get your little trash can. If you hover over your trash can, drop it there, it'll delete it. Or you can click the delete in the editor window. So continuing with our triggers, so that was completion and that was delay. We also have position triggers. So if I drop that onto the spotline acro, I can pick any motor. Let's go ahead and use this acro one. Let's say once it hits 20, go ahead. I'm going to also change this so it's moving forward. And then we can go ahead and drop a new motor onto that. I'll just go to 100, save. And then when I load and go here, we can see once the acro reaches, we're already there. That was a bad example. Let's see, let's send this to 200. Save those changes. Let's change this to 120. All right, let's try this again. We save our changes, load, go. Once we get to 120, then we fire off our second one. And then lastly, we also have our FX input trigger. I don't have one hooked up, so I'm not going to really be able to do anything, but just like before, you can pick your FX, choose which input to trigger the next thing. The nice thing about triggers, which is different than links, is we can now stack them. And what that means is, so if we go ahead and let's go to start new queue 34, I'm going to drop acro onto playback 3. I'm going to do completion, and then I'm going to do a delay right on my completion, and then I'll do the acro again. And so what this will allow me to do, so let's go to 100, save. This will wait for step 1 to complete. Once step 1 completes, then we'll go ahead, we can delay for 2 seconds, and then we can fire off step 3. So then when we load that and run it, what that looks like is we run down to 100, it completes, then we wait our 2 seconds, and then we fire our next step. And this has all sorts of fun uses. So one of the big ones being complete and then delay. Another one you could do is delay and then position to make sure your motor is moving the way you want it to, so it triggers going the direction you want it to. Is another useful use case for that one. And then beyond just triggers and playbacks and steps and all of that, another new big feature in Spikemark 6 is Spikemark actions. And Spikemark actions are a way to program Spikemark to do things in your queue stack. So I'm going to right click, add a new queue, and we're going to start from here. We have 3 different types. We have motor property actions. So what this allows me to do is I can pick a motor, and then we have a couple different properties that we could change. So for this one, let's go ahead and change the length, and let's go ahead and make this 20. So when I run this, that'll change the length of the floor pocket in our model. And you might be wondering, like, why is this useful? This can be useful so you can more accurately represent what's happening on the stage. So if you are changing out what's on the deck wagon or what's on the floor pocket on the lift, you can, as part of that queue, you can change it so your model looks more accurate size-wise. So then if I go ahead, I can load and run this, and we can see the floor pocket changed its height back there. The other one that's super useful is min-max jog percent for properties. So if we have a high speed or slow machine, doesn't really matter, but we know, okay, we're going to go from a big set piece to a small set piece, and we don't want to be able to run it super fast one way or another. We can program that in. So every time we run that queue, we always know our jogging speed has been limited down or not. Besides just jogging speed or in properties, we also have actions for motor methods. So again, if I can pick, we'll go ahead, we'll just use floor pocket because it's at the top of our list again. And here we can do things like we can soft stop an individual axis, or we can activate, deactivate, and we can do the new 0-speed brake release and brake engage. We'll talk about that more in a second. This can be handy for activating and deactivating or soft stopping. So if we know, okay, we're done with this machine, we can deactivate it now for the rest of the show, or we can, if we're waiting for a specific line to stop a specific machine, we can program an action to soft stop the axis. So if I go ahead and let's also grab the floor pocket and we'll do soft stop and I'll save that. And then if I grab the floor pocket, I'll add this to playback 2. Let's go ahead and say, let's raise this to 100 or 72 because that's as high as it can go. And then I load this. I can go ahead, and so I can start my floor pocket. We can see it's moving, and then when I fire playback 1, it soft stopped the motor. That example was a little boring because the floor pocket was the only thing running, so I also could have just pressed the soft stop. So if we change this a little bit, let's add a new cue. Let's add a couple of things. So let's add the turntable. Let's send the turntable's a bad one. Let's delete that. Let's add the push stick mini, and let's add the floor pocket. Let's send the push stick mini to 200, save that. Let's add this back up to 72, and let's slow it down. We'll do 2 and 2, save, and then let's go ahead and add our action again. No. Add our action again to the floor pocket, to soft stop. Okay. So now if I run this, so we can see both our floor pocket and our push stick are moving. And when I run that action, we can see the push stick mini back here, still moving, and now it's done. And our floor pocket stopped. So along with motor actions, we also have playback properties, which are similar to motor properties, but this time we're talking about playbacks. So if I can pick a playback, and then I can pick one of the properties. So if I know I always want to start this specific cue with playback 2 or playback 1 running at 10%, I can program that in. Playback 2, save. So then when I load and run this, we can see that resets, or not resets, it changes the playback speed. So if I know I always want to start slow and speed it up as we go, or if I always want to start fast and turn it down, whichever works, I can, again, program that right into the cue so it's always right. And I don't have to think about, oh, remember to turn it down or remember to turn it up. So I'm going to add a new cue, and I said we are going to talk about it later, and now is later, is the all-new, we'll pick our spot line acro, is our all-new 0-speed brake release. So with the supported hardware, which is the V6 Pro 5 unipolar V6 card, we can choose to tell the stagehand to release the brakes and hold the load at 0 speed and flux the motor. This is super handy for if we're doing some intricate movements where we don't want the brakes to fire in between each individual segment. So as an example here, so we have in Q39, I've programmed our 0-speed brake release, and I'm going to add a cue. I'm going to grab our spot line acro right here, drag it over, drop it onto playback 2. Let's go to, say, 400, and let's go fast. Save those changes. Then let's say, let's do a completion, and then we'll send it back down to 200, and we'll go even faster, and we'll save those changes. And then I'm going to go ahead, and once I'm done with that, I'll want to do re-enable the brakes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to duplicate Q39, and I'm going to change it from release to engage and save those changes. So I can go ahead now, and when I run Q39, I've loaded, press start, hold to run. We can now see this new icon over here in the access list showing us that the brakes are now would be released. I'm just running in simulator, so it's less of an exciting demo to see, but we can see the brakes are released. I can go ahead, I can run my acro up and down, and then once it's done, we weren't in position, so our times are off. We're also running at 10%. So I'm going to go ahead and I can start speeding that up. And if we want, we can double click, get it back to 100. There we go. It completes. Now we're coming back. And then I can go ahead, load, and I can re-engage the brakes. We can see that our icon indicating the status of the brakes has gone away. Also over in the properties, when I have the acro selected, I can see that at 0 speed brakes are engaged, and that'll also give me another indication of what the brakes will do. So the other thing, yet another new thing in Spikemark 6 is the ability to add a speed limited zone. We briefly saw this with the turntable, but what this does is, I'm going to show it with the Spotlight Acro again, is over here in properties under speed, I can click the configure SLZ, and this allows me to set a position and a speed. And anytime we are beyond that position, whether it's in the forward direction or the reverse direction, we have our two individual ones. So let's say if I set it for 300 inches, I don't want the Spotlight Acro to be going faster than, say, 48 inches per second. And I can go ahead and update that. And so now, when I'm programming, this is where we get that red zone here, which tells us that we have programmed something that's not allowed. So if I even make this faster, so we can see our trajectory is now in this red zone. And what that'll do is, once we hit this position that we just set, that 300 inches, if we're going too fast, it'll stop it. This can be handy for if we are doing things like unloading or loading people or set pieces up at the grid, and once we get to a certain level, there starts to become obstructions and we don't want to be going too fast. This will prevent us from running too fast in those scenarios. And I can just discard those changes, and I will just turn this back off by going 0 and and 0, and we can update that. So the other new thing is a completely redesigned authorization system. So at the moment, I don't have it enabled, and that's why I'm able to do everything. But now I'm gonna go ahead, I will enable it. I think, I'm not gonna enable it. I don't know the password. It's an all new authorization system, so I can choose exactly which permission levels I want, and I can have as many users with different permission levels as I choose to create. So I can lock things down specifically to, okay, this operator is only allowed to run something. This operator is only allowed to jog the motor, or however I want to narrow it down. Everything from this person can change the max position, but not the min down position, and all the granularity there. And by default, Spikemark has 4, but you can create as many as you want. We have a administrator, which is what I'm running right now, which has all of the permissions. There's a commissioner who's allowed to change things like the min-max speeds, the PID tuning, stuff like that. There is the programmer who is allowed to create edit queues, edit movements, and then there's the operator who's only allowed to run things. And depending on your need, you can really fine tune that and get that to be as specific as you want, as you need. So I have a question about the specs. So we recommend an i7 running the software, but you can an i5 also works. You're just gonna have a better experience if it has a little more power to it. The nice thing about the console, which I didn't touch on, is it has the computer built into it. It's a Dell that just sticks out the back, so you can, if there were ever to be a failure or anything like that, it's just a commodity off-the-shelf part, super easy to swap out. But the nice thing about the console specifically then is also that it's built in, and you can pre-configured, and you don't have to worry about that. But the nice thing is also you can still just download it and run it off of your laptop if you care. You want at least 8 gigs of RAM, 16 would be better, and i5 or an i7 is what we like to recommend. And also, Spikemark's still free. You can still just download it. You don't have to have the console or anything like that. So then a couple other things to point out that I have forgotten while I was doing other things. So this is not new, but it's not a thing a lot of people know about. Is you can, so I just clicked on this push stick mini movement, and it's going to 200 inches. And now let's go another foot. And if I don't know what that is, or if I don't want to do that, I can do the math right in the window. So I can say plus 12, or I can do minus 12, or let's say I know that I want to do go 5 feet and go 5 times 12. And then I don't even have to think about doing the math. And that works in a bunch of different places. And so it's not new, but it's, well, I guess the multiplication part of it is new, but a lot of people don't know about that. It's a cool thing I like to point out. Back to the computer specs thing there for a second. We prefer SSDs. So the computer to run Spikemark, we recommend it be an SSD for just the speed and responsiveness, but we then typically just back up our files to like flash drives. And then we also have a break release question. Yep, so so about the brake release. So what you're doing is we are turning the motor on. So this is really for, you want it to be a Pro 5 or later that can do full speed, 0 torque. That's backwards. Full torque, 0 speed. It can hold the load while fluxing the motor. So the motor stays engaged the entire time. And when you come to that 0 speed, like you say when your movement's over, the motor stays engaged and it stays holding the load, and the brakes stay disengaged, rather than coming to the end and the brakes engaging and the motor shutting off. The big use for this, again, it's when you're trying to make fluid motion, and you don't want the chunk of the brakes clicking in the middle of your sequence. It works across queues, so if like I showed before, we could have a couple different queues, or it can all be in one queue, and you just have your one sequence programmed. The other thing is, we definitely recommend when you're doing 0 speed brake releases to be hold to run, because if you release the hold to run, it'll also re-engage the brakes. Or if you soft stop it, it'll also re-engage the brakes. Or if it faults, it'll re-engage the brakes. Spikemark is Windows only. Yep. You do not need a slower decel for that ability, for the 0 speed brake release. I'm assuming is what you're talking about there. So it'll still just do its normal decel down to 0, and then it'll just hold at 0. So if you want it to be a fast decel down to 0, you can have a fast. If you want a nice gentle, and you can also have that. The other new thing in Spikemark is, so we've always had groups before, but now we have what's called a locked group. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a curtain call, and I'm going to add another curtain call, everybody's favorite machine, and then I'm just going to rename this one so we can see that they're different. Curtain call 2 and curtain call 1. So to make a group, now all you do is over here, and this also works in jogging, in the jog workspace. So you go ahead, you grab, you drag it, you drop it onto your other one, and this pops up your new group window. So I can give it a name, call it curtains, and this is where I can go ahead and I can pick locked or unlocked. And for this example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick locked, and I'm going to go ahead and click create. So we can see we have our group down here, and when I add it, it has, we can see it has our 2 motors in it, but now it shows up as one individual line in the queues. And this is really nice for when you have, say, a couple chain motors lifting one video wall or one set piece, and you really want them to always be going to the same position. Now it's just a lot faster to program it, and it takes up less space. So a locked group, they always go to the same position at the same speed. And we can see over here in our access list that represented with a little lock. And our unlocked group is the same as the group as you know it now, where if I go ahead and I can drag in this one, we have the ability to send the motors to individual locations at different speeds and still fault everything if one faults and stop everything, but they can go to their different positions. And there's a question about the load cell monitoring. So I am in simulator at the moment, but so I can't really show off the faults, but so something that has a load cell, so like the Spotlight Acro, and if I go ahead and click that over in the properties, this would show up with all the load information, but right now I'm in simulator, I don't have one, so it just says unknown. But if I go ahead and I click configure, this is where I can type in what my overweight and underweight thresholds are. This will typically come with, depending on the machine, if it's one of our stock machines, we have these stock scaling and offset factors for it. But then this is where you would go ahead and you can set what your underweight and what your overweight threshold are. And then what happens is, so you're running, and if you go into one of those, you go above your overweight or you go below your underweight, it will stop it. Yes, we can control servos. It is our stagehand is designed specifically, or like our the ones you see on the website are specifically for AC induction motors, but then we also have a little off menu option for servo stuff, and it looks just like our other stagehands. It's just more bespoke, but then we can, it all programs the same, it all has the same abilities, it's just not on the website. We actually are in the process of testing a dual servo lift at the moment with a stagehand. So definitely something we can do. Let's see. We talked about we've now had our quick hits of all of the new and most importantest new stuff. And so if there's any more questions, now would be a great time. Otherwise, I think that is it for today. So the control cars are tuned per so the stagehand is one stagehand goes to one machine, and so this PID tuning you see over here is specifically for the position loop for that machine, and then the drive, the speed loop is already tuned out of the box for you when paired with our stock machines. I guess also with the V6, speaking of the tuning, is down in the advanced properties. So when you have like a Pro 5, we now are able to display the real-time positioner. So this can be super handy while you're trying to do tuning. So you can see that is that positioner going down as I'm turning up the P gain. And then we also get to see now the motor command. So this is basically a 0 to 100%. So if we see that this motor command is going up to 100%, no matter how much more I try to turn up the P gain, it's not going to be able to go that fast. So these new feedback values are super helpful when it comes to doing some of that position tuning stuff. And then also when using the stock machines, they come in with some default position tuning values that'll be pretty good for most applications, and then it's really dialing it in when you need to. But what comes out of the box is definitely going to get you up and running to started. That's a great question. Yes, so by default, when you start a new show file, it has 4 playbacks. But if you're, say, using a consolette, so a consolette will still work and it'll just control playback 1. And so if you don't want to see those other playbacks, you can right click on them and you can delete them. And then we can also see that they just go away. They go away. And similarly, if we can add them back by going to the cues menu, add playback, add playback, add playback. And if you really want to, you can go ahead and you can add more than 4. You can add as many as you want, and then just use on-screen buttons. But you're able to delete them or add them. All right, cool. Well, that'll be it for today. Thanks everyone for stopping by and checking out Console and Spikemark 6.